Well, for more on Ireland's election, I'm joined by Brian O'Donovan. Brian is a correspondent at RTE News. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
So, an interesting outcome so far. This unexpected surge from Sinn Féin, a wake-up call certainly for the other two parties. What should we read into this election outcome so far?
Yes, that's right, and I can tell you that just literally in the last few minutes the counting has finished, all the seats have been filled, and the words being used in Ireland are things like earthquake, seismic, shock, to see this situation whereby for the last 100 years two main centrist parties have dominated in Ireland, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. Now we have this third party emerging, the leftist nationalist Sinn Féin, the former political wing of the IRA, bursting onto the scene and commanding really the biggest percentage share of the vote in terms of first preference votes. But what has happened is because Sinn Féin didn't run enough candidates, they are not the biggest party. The biggest party will go to Fianna Fáil, which is one of those centrist parties I mentioned at the top. Then comes Sinn Féin, then comes Fine Gael. The problem is, though, as Holly said in her report, none of them are anywhere near reaching 80 seats. That's the threshold you need to form a government. There's going to have to be coalition talks. Then it gets very complicated because the other two big parties, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, have refused to go into power with Sinn Féin. They disagree with their politics. They also disagree with their past ties to the IRA and the troubles in Northern Ireland. Over the last day or two, one of those parties, Fianna Fáil, has sort of kind of opened the door and suggested, well, maybe we will work with Sinn Féin, but it's a long road ahead. No one knows what way it's going to be, but there's going to have to be compromise, there's going to have to be dealings, there's going to have to be negotiations, and it could take some time.
And let's look at the breakdown of the demographics. We saw that younger voters skewed much more heavily to Sinn Féin than the other parties. What do those demographic differences tell us about sort of the direction that the country could be heading in?
I think there's a sense that Sinn Féin tapped into a very populist feeling and a very anger really running within Ireland of what was going on in Ireland right now. And again, Holly mentioned it in her reports there. Things like problems with healthcare, problems with housing, problems with homelessness, rents spiralling. Right now the economy is doing very well in Ireland. But when I speak to colleagues, friends, family back in Ireland, they say, okay, I have a job, but I've got a massive commute. Traffic is terrible. I can't afford my childcare. I can't afford my rent. I can't afford to buy a house. You could say, oh, these are the, the problems or the issues of a booming economy, but it's really starting to grate on people. They very much blamed those two big parties. Sinn Féin swooped in with their alternatives. The younger vote as well is interesting. People would say, well, younger people would have less memories of the troubles in Northern Ireland, so they would associate less negativity with Sinn Féin. But certainly we see a scenario now where Sinn Féin will be a force to be reckoned with. The leader of Sinn Féin, Mary Lou McDonald, has been saying today that she could herself be Prime Minister. She could be Taoiseach. To do that, she would have to get the support of a lot of other smaller parties. Very, very difficult, and I say a long road ahead when it comes to negotiations.
And in terms of priorities, obviously we saw that according to a lot of polls, it was healthcare that topped the list at about 32%, followed by housing at 23%. Brexit and all its implications, 1%. How do you see that breaking up? Are you surprised that Brexit ranked so low compared to the other issues? I
was surprised it ranked so low because it has dominated Ireland. It has dominated the media. It has dominated the media in Ireland, the media in Britain for the last 2-3 years. And you have this scenario where nobody really resonated with them on the doorsteps. I think there's a couple of issues here. There was probably a sense from a lot of Irish people's perspective, there's not a whole lot we can do about it. Yes, Brexit has a huge impact on Ireland, but actually it's a British issue. It is up for them to resolve, and there's nothing we can really do about it. I think that was a very disappointing number for the Taoiseach, the Prime Minister, Leo Varadkar. He was seen as a successful Brexit negotiator, and he thought he would be able to take that success into the elections and get a political boost from it and get a bounce from voters. Nobody cared. It ranked at the bottom, as you say, only 1%. The big issues were people's pockets, being able to afford rent, being able to afford childcare, being able to afford to buy a house. And again, Mary Lou McDonald, the leader of Sinn Féin, tapped into it. She said, yes, there's an economic recovery. People aren't feeling it in their pockets. My policies will help people feel it in their pockets. And I think that really, really resonated with voters.
Because that's really what it comes down to. It's all one thing to say the economy is doing well, but if you don't feel it, your votes will certainly reflect that. So then, as we look at then how these issues are going to be at play for whoever the next Taoiseach is, how are they going to sort of translate those issues and formulate an agenda to really move forward?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be the big question. Okay, Sinn Féin came out and said, we'll fix the housing crisis and we'll fix the healthcare crisis. How are you going to do it? This is the big problem. And when you come out with these supports and we come out with these pledges, Sinn Féin never been in power before. This, if they end up being in power, will be the real test. And that's why you see the likes of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael stepping back and being a bit reluctant to go in there. They're not sure of their economic policies. They don't think their economic policies are costed. And then, of course, you have the whole history issue. You have the past links to the IRA, the troubles in Northern Ireland. And remember the big issue as well for Sinn Féin in all of this. They want unity on the island of Ireland. That is one of their core promises, one of their core pledges, that Britain would no longer control Northern Ireland. We would have a united Ireland. And that's something they are going to push for if they are in power. And that could very much change the dynamics, certainly when it comes to Irish-US relations in a post-Brexit scenario. It'll be very interesting to see how it plays out.
Indeed. Well, hopefully we'll have you back to chat more about that. Great having you on there. Brian O'Donovan, correspondent at RTE News.